Innsmouth, stranger.
Greetings, travellers, and thank you for joining us today in sunny Innsmouth, where, as you will see, the big yellow bus has pulled up outside Innsmouth Picture House. Yes, it's a return to Innsmouth Cinema for us. I'm one of your guides, Rob Poynton.
And I'm the other one, Tim Mendes. Yeah, today we thought we'd mark the passing of Roger Corman by looking at one of his best movies, I think, in my opinion anyway. We're going to be looking at 1964's Masque of the Red Death.
Yes, now obviously Roger Corman passed away, I think it was last month in May, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
And because of the way things work in Innsmouth, we're a little bit behind on the news, but we thought we should pay tribute to a man who, well, what was he called? The Pope of Pop Cinema? The Cult King? I mean,
yeah.
So many good stroke bad films he made. It's
absolutely
incredible career, yeah.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, we've got a couple of other things just to chat about. So how's the Monster in My Bed podcast going, Tim?
It's going very well, yeah. Zoe and I have just released our 5th episode, and this time it's actually one that our listeners here might be interested in, because we're looking at the Benson and Morehouse movie Spring, which is a Lovecraftian romance. It's you've had rom-coms and rom-coms with zombs, but this is tentacle rom tentacle. I don't know what you call it, but anyway.
Yeah, they do make very good films, that pair, don't they? And
yeah.
Is it the 3 films that are sort of linked? You can watch all 3 as a succession?
Yeah, well, they're all pretty much linked. I mean, Resolution and Endless are very obviously linked. Spring has links to Endless. Synchronic has links to all 3. And so does Something in the Dirt. But the links in those 2 are smaller. But they're there. So it's all a connected universe, basically.
Excellent. So, of course, the link for that will be in the show notes below. And I'd just also like to remind our listeners about the Innsmouth Literary Festival, which is coming up September the 28th in Bedford. Same venue as before. The King in Yellow has let us use his house again.
Nice.
I'm not sure. I think there's less people leave than go in, but we'll gloss over that, you know.
Yeah, it's best not to pry.
Yeah, a small price to pay, isn't it, for a good venue?
Yeah, exactly. Don't peek behind the curtain. That's always the thing. Yeah.
And I believe we've pretty much got our guest list lined up now.
Indeed, yeah, we're pretty much sorted. It's pretty much locked in. I'm in the process of putting people on panels and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we're actually ahead of schedule when it comes to working out the running format this year, because we were right up against it last year, trying to cram everything in. But I think I've got it nailed down quite early this year, so I'm happy.
Yes, and of course that includes Charles Stross as our guest of honour, so you get a chance to meet him and we'll have a Q&A chat with him as well. We've got our other guests, a couple of panels going on. I think we're going to have something on gaming this year, aren't we, as well? A gaming-specific panel.
Indeed, yeah, there's going to be 3 panels. There's going to be one looking at location, the use of location in weird fiction, because we've often talked about Lovecraft's greatest creation being his settings, things like that. There's going to be the gaming one, like you say, and then there's going to be a panel to close out the day at the King's House, looking at comedy in weird fiction.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Am I going to get the chance to roll out a few puns on that one, do you think?
Oh, I think you might.
Put it this way, whether I get the chance or not, I'm going to be crowbarring them in as often as I can. So
Yeah. Mr. Stross has agreed to take part in that panel as well, so that's going to be a fun one. That. Yeah.
Excellent. And then we're down to Esquires in Bedford for an evening of jollity and fun. Featuring Byronic Sex Exile. We've got some great readings, some poetry. It's going to be a good evening as well.
Yeah, it's all shaping up nicely. So, you can go and get your tickets now. I imagine the link will be below.
Yes, we're about half full at the moment.
Oh,
so
excellent.
you've got a little bit of time, but, you know, we do have limits. The King does have certain limitations, so, you know, it pays to book quickly. That's all we're saying.
Absolutely.
Okay, so shall we move into the foyer of the cinema? As usual, there is a variety of Innsmouthian ice creams and snacks available. Ingest at your peril. But let's get in and take a look at the Masque of the Red Death.
Looking for something quick and nutritious to feed the squids? Then come on down to Dyer's Frozen Foods. Nutritious meals fresh from the freezer. Penguin slices, 5 for $3. Fish fingers, pack of 12 for $3. Dagon pops, 10 for $3. Pilchard surprise, $5. Frozen sea nuggets, $5 for a bag. And frozen yogurt sosos, only $3 per tub. Plus an extensive range of large chest freezers should you wish to store your own meat. Dyer's Frozen Foods, for all your fishy needs.
Dyer's Frozen Foods, 37 Marsh Lane, only 100 yards from this cinema.
There we are then, the 1964 Masque of the Red Death, directed by Roger Corman. Now, before we talk about the film, let's just look briefly at Corman's life, because it was quite a remarkable career. He was born in 1926 in Detroit. And I thought, what is it about Detroit that produced so many great things? Roger Corman, the MC5, Iggy and the Stooges.
Yeah.
Very interesting town.
I think what it is, it's like Manchester here. It produced a lot of creative people, and Glasgow and places like that. I think you find it's places with the high industry, very industrial places tend to have that creative spark. I think it's an output for people, isn't it?
Yeah, especially when the place is in decline, right? I guess
absolutely.
There's something about that maybe spurs people to do something. Yeah. He followed in his father's footsteps and he trained to be an engineer at Stanford, although he took a break for 2 years naval service. In 1948, he got his first job with US Electrical Motors in LA. And I love this. He lasted for 2 days. Apparently on the second day, he said, "I've made a terrible mistake," and just walked out.
Nice.
I did actually do that after my first job, but it was about 18 months. It wasn't 2 days, to be fair, but yeah.
We've all wanted to do that, haven't we? We've all wanted to do that.
From there, he moved to 20th Century Fox, where he started in the mailroom and then became a story reader. He left there to study English literature at Oxford and then returned to LA and started writing scripts. His first feature was made in 1954, Monster from the Ocean Floor. After that, he made, a real mix of things, a lot of Westerns. And I was quite amused to find he made the first Fast and Furious film.
I didn't know that.
That was in the 1950s. And I think it was at Universal later bought the franchise.
Yeah.
I mean, they're up to like 9 or 10 now or something, I imagine, aren't they, with those?
I did not know that. That's hilarious.
A lot of the time he was working with the American Releasing Company, who later changed their name to American International Pictures, AIP, who were, of course, responsible for many classic horror films.
Yeah, I'm going to look at a little bit of them in a moment, but there's some classic in inverted commas amongst that.
So Corman, as I say, was making quite a mix of films at the times, Westerns, gangster films, sci-fi. In 1959, he formed a film group with his brother, and that's when his career really started kicking into gear, because in 1960, of course, they released Little Shop of Horrors. AIP approached him and asked him to make horror films. They started with The Fall of the House of Usher. I think at first they offered him a $100,000 budget and told him to make it in 7 days. But he managed to extend that to $200,000 budget and 15 days, which is still quite remarkable when you think about it.
Yeah.
So The Fall of the House of Usher was the first of 8 Poe films that he made with AIP. And, well, he said, and I think most people would agree, Masque of the Red Death and Usher were the best 2 out of that whole series.
Yeah.
After that, he moved into, the late 60s, everyone was making psychedelic films. Corman produced The Trip, which was written by Jack Nicholson, who, of course, he'd worked with before, and other such greats. I mean, there's such a huge list of films here, but Death Race 2000, Piranha, Humanoids from the Deep, Blood Fist. We had Roger Corman Presents series. And, of course, going back perhaps to that music influence from Detroit, Rock and Roll High School featuring the Ramones.
Nice.
So, yeah, a huge amount of films made and hugely influential in so many ways, especially these Poe films, because I think, like you, me, were of that age where this sort of stuff was late night television, wasn't it? Back in our childhood.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
This and Hammer were the two mainstays, weren't they, of horror in the 60s.
And Amicus. Yeah. Amicus. That was the other one.
Amicus, yes.
Yeah, so Masque of Red Death is based on the 1842 story of the same name by Edgar Allan Poe, but it also contains a subplot from Hop Frog, which is, we'll get into later, but that's the whole bit with the entertainer and the guy in the ape costume. And apparently there was another subplot taken from Torture by Hope, which was written by Auguste Villiers de L'Isle Adam. Apologies if I got that wrong, but I have no idea how to pronounce it.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with that story at all.
No, me neither. I wasn't even familiar with the author. That's something that may be worth investigating, I think.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is the 7th of Corman's Poe adaptations that was put out by American International Pictures. Although the 6th, The Haunted Palace, wasn't actually a Poe adaptation. It was an adaptation of Charles Dexter Ward. So...
Absolutely. Yeah, they just put the Poe poem, didn't they, at the front and the back, or the back end, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, they later did the exact same thing with Witchfinder General.
Ah.
They in the US it was released as The Conqueror Worm.
Ah, of course.
And they put the poem in there.
Yeah,
exactly the same way they did with The Haunted Palace.
That's got even less relationship to Hopkins. I would have thought, I'm struggling to see that connection.
Yeah, it's really strange, isn't it? But studios did all kinds of stuff like that, especially because they were basically what was known as a Poverty Row studio. That was the movement back then. I mean, all them old black and white horror movies like White Zombie and Plague of the Zombies and all that, they were all made by these studios that didn't have two pennies to rub together.
Yeah.
And it was Poverty Row movie making. It was basically what became B movies.
I suppose that's the film equivalent of the pulps, isn't it then, really? Because the pulps weren't bringing out nice glossy hardback books, were they? I mean, cheap and cheerful.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's basically the film equivalent of pulp magazines. And yeah, they were basically churned out quickly on a budget, and they made their money by quantity over quality. I think you could quite safely say.
I think this film has both, though. I do think this is one of those rare occurrences where a B movie has deserved cult status as actually quite an artistic film.
Yeah,
that's something, of course, we'll be talking about later on, mainly down to the cinematography, I think.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with you there. They did put out quite a lot of crap. But they did also put out some notable releases, such as The Abominable Dr. Phibes.
Oh, yes.
Die Monster Die. The old Karloff, Colour Out of Space. The Dunwich Horror.
Oh, yes.
That was them as well.
Yeah.
They also did that awful American dub of Mad Max. I don't know if have you ever seen that. I
think so. I do. I've seen the American version of it, which terrible. Seems really odd. Yeah,
it's really terrible. Amusingly, they also put out Carry On Camping in the United States.
Really?
Yeah, it was them that actually put out Carry On Camping in the States. Yeah.
Were many of the Carry On films released over in the States, or is that the?
Not many of them.
Right.
Not many of them. Well, I think some of them, the early ones were because they were from Anglo-American films amalgamated.
Right.
So I think they did. But yeah, the later ones certainly I don't think did. But yeah, Carry On Camping was put out by these guys. Really strange. They closed their doors in 1980, but reopened them in 2021 with a run of rom-coms. But they've actually done nothing since 2022, so they were open for about a year. The last produced film of their original run was Brian De Palma's Dress to Kill.
Ah, no, that's quite a good movie, actually.
That is a good movie. That's the thing. It's really strange when you look. I looked through their entire filmography this morning, And it was like crap, 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 absolute classic. Crap, 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 absolute classic.
Yeah.
Crap, 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 absolute classic. Yeah.
Strange how that works, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
it is.
it's like lightning strikes a few times, perhaps, or just a combination of the right story and everything
Yeah.
else. I wonder how much it is a thing where some films are obviously rushed out just to get something out, and other films perhaps a little more care is invested in them.
Yeah, I think that might be it. Yeah, but this was shot in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Which is not long.
No.
When you think about it.
And I believe it was filmed in England as well, this one.
Yeah, it was. It was. They reused a lot of the sets from Beckett, the Thomas Beckett movie.
Yep, Richard Burton.
That's it. It was basically leftover sets. It was exactly what the Carry On team did with Carry On Cleo. They reused, Antony and Cleopatra. They reused the sets. Another Richard Burton movie, randomly. Yeah.
Yes, where he was quite prolific at that time. He's probably the leading actor at that time as well, wasn't he, I guess?
Yeah.
And as we said, it was based on the Poe story, but it was written by Charles Beaumont. But he was too ill to come to London, apparently. So Corman brought over a chap called R. Wright Campbell to finish the screenplay. And it was him who added in the hop frog element. He brought that into it. Yeah, as you say, 5 weeks. Though Corman still thought that was too long, 5 weeks. And he was complaining that the English crews worked too slow.
Well, back then, all the unions, right? Because there was that whole thing with the BBC. If they weren't finished by a certain the time they were supposed to finish, there was no overruns. Like when they're filming Doctor Who, if they weren't done, they'd just pull the plug and walk out.
That was it. You're off. You're done.
They'd just pull the plug. There'd be no like, can you finish now, chaps? No, they'd just turn it off and walk out.
No, like give us 5 or 10 minutes or nothing. That was it.
No.
5 o'clock on the dot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, insane, isn't it?
Yeah, this may have impacted the film in some way because Corman said he was never quite happy with the final masquerade scene.
Yes.
And he put that down to the crew working so slowly, apparently.
No, right.
He would have liked to spend more time on it, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose things work differently in the States and over here, I guess. You know, that was probably a bit of sort of a culture shock to begin with, coming over here. A bunch of people standing around drinking tea. Going, I couldn't possibly go over 5 minutes now.
More than my job's worth.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. There you go.
I think one thing we have in these films is, however cheesy or hokey the story is, and I'm not saying by any means that the Poe ones are, but they're always bolstered by the strong casts, aren't they? It's always a good cast.
Yeah. Yeah, just looking through the cast lists of these Poe adaptations, it's like a who's who of horror cinema back in that day, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So we start with Vincent Price, of course, in the lead role as Prince Prospero. I mean, well, we don't have to say anything, do we?
No. What more do we need to say? To be fair, we went into Vincent Price's career in more detail when we looked at the Return of the Sorcerer adaptation, didn't we?
Yes.
In Strange Shadows.
And Fibes as well. And we also covered the Haunted Palace. I think it was our maybe first or might have been second episode, I think.
Yeah, it was before my time, that, yeah.
You can go way back to the Dark Ages and check that one out.
Nice.
Yeah. But the main female lead, Jane Asher, now she had quite an interesting career as well. And I guess at the time or shortly after this, her main claim to fame, apart from her acting career, was being engaged to Paul McCartney.
Indeed. Now, there's an anecdote. I don't know if you read about this, but during the filming of The Masque of the Red Death, Jane Asher brought Mr. McCartney to the set.
Wow.
Because he liked Corman's movies. So in Swan's McCartney, right, from the Beatles, Corman didn't have a clue who he was. Didn't have a clue. It was only like after he'd left and somebody said, "Oh, that's Paul McCartney from the Beatles." He was like, "Oh, right, okay, fair enough."
I suppose, to be fair, this is 64, so I don't know, have they really hit the States yet? They might not have gone to the States yet. I'm not sure when they first flew over.
Beatlemania, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it might have been. Well, it must have been around this, 64, 65, I would have thought.
Well, I thought it was 63 because that was sort of their big time that it really kicked off over here. That was like Love Me Do and all that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Perhaps a listener can let us know.
Yeah, I'm not really up on my Beatles trivia, to be fair. I was always more of a Stones man myself.
Well, yeah. Well, Poe does get a mention, right, in I Am the Walrus. So,
Indeed.
you know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Was he on the cover of Sergeant Pepper as well? I'd be surprised if he wasn't.
Probably.
I mean, Uncle Alistair was on there, right? So I'm sure
he was.
Poe must be in there somewhere.
Uncle Alistair. Brilliant. Yeah, Jane Asher, her first role was actually in Quatermass, in the original Quatermass. She played a little girl.
Yes.
So there you go. That was a title in the film, Little Girl.
Little girl.
Yeah, and she also went on to do Alfie, episodes of Marple, Poirot. She was in 2 episodes of the Sarah Jane Adventures, the Doctor Who spin-off.
Yes, yeah.
And most notably for me, anyway, I think it's probably her best role was in the Stone Tape.
I was going to say the Stone Tape. Yeah. Although arguably her even better role was in Crossroads.
Crossroads. There we go.
From Quatermass to Crossroads. That's quite a...
That is, isn't it? Yeah. She also wrote 3 novels and is a shareholder in Private Eye magazine.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, well, power to our elbow then. Private Eye is one of the few publications I buy regularly.
Yeah, same. And also, aside from that, I think she's probably best known for cakes. So insert smutty joke about Jane Asher's buns here.
All right. Yes, okay. Oh, she also married the cartoonist Gerald Scarfe.
I didn't know.
Well, he did a lot of sort of political cartoons, didn't he, in the 80s and 90s?
Indeed.
And, of course, he worked with Pink Floyd on The Wall as well.
Yeah, the other main female lead is Hazel Court, who plays Juliana. Now, would you like to reveal to the listeners how you've named Juliana?
Well, I was just glancing through my notes here, and I have the 2-word phrase Juliana Titcross, which Tim suggested would be an excellent name for a character in a carry-on film, which it certainly would. I was, of course, referring to a scene later on in the film where Juliana brands herself with the inverted cross on her breast, the right breast, I believe.
On her bosom.
On her bosom, yeah.
Titcross.
Lady Titcross.
Yeah. Well, she also appeared in Corman's Raven and later appeared in Curse of Frankenstein.
Ooh.
And also Premature, which was another decent horror movie. She did 4 episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. She was in Dr. Blood's Coffin. And an episode of The Twilight Zone. So quite a well-known horror actress at the time. Bit of a scream queen.
Yeah.
Next up, we had David Weston, who was playing Gino, who was the love interest of Jane Asher. Now, he appeared in Doctor in Distress back in the day.
And tell me, when you heard his name, that you didn't go, da, 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 Gino.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Also in The Red Baron and Doctor Who's The Massacre, which was also known as The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, which was a 1965 serial starring William Hartnell. And he late on in his career, he appeared as the, I don't know how to describe it, basically like a lion bloke. He was like a cross between a lion and a man, a Thariel, known as Birrock in Warrior's Gate, which was a notable serial, a Tom Baker serial, that wrote out Romana and K9. So that's why people remember that one.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. He was the lead alien in that.
Lead alien.
Basically.
From
Yeah.
Always good on the CV. Lead alien.
Indeed. Next up, we had Nigel Green as Ludvico.
Nigel Green.
Yeah. And most people will probably remember him from Zulu, right? He also appeared in Hercules, Jason and the Argonauts, and Countess Dracula.
Nice. That's a nice resume,
isn't it? Isn't it? This is one thing I've noticed with a lot of these people. They've had some nice roles. The next one is no different. John Westbrook, who played the Red Death. He was mostly a voice actor, and you can see why. Right, with that voice, it's so fruity, you know. He also appeared in Legia, the other Corman
All right.
Poe adaptation, and he voiced Treebeard in the Lord of the Rings cartoon thing, the Bakshi.
Ah, wow. I never guessed that. Funnily enough, I'm listening to the BBC radio adaptation at the moment of Lord of the Rings, which was, was that late 70s, I think?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's full of these type of voices as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
He might have done that as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And I have to say, initially, his voice reminded me very much of Christopher Lee. Had that very similar timbre. That could have almost been Christopher Lee there as well.
Very similar. Very, very similar. Yeah, and then last up of notable cast, we have Mr. Patrick McGee as Alfredo.
Oh, he's a great actor, yeah. I saw him once on stage for A-level at school. We studied Marlowe's Faustus, and we went to see the theatre version in the West End somewhere. And McGee played Mephistopheles.
Oh, nice.
And it was just great because it was an entirely dark stage and a couple of spotlights come on, moody spotlights, and there's Faustus. And McGee sort of floats in as a monk, a black friar, basically, with the hood and everything, and just goes, Faustus! And it was like, ooh, one of those moments,
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, I'd love to have seen that. Yeah, I think he's known for Zulu, Clockwork Orange, Dementia 13, and the aforementioned Karloff Colour Out of Space, Die Monster Die.
Yes. I think he was in some of the Amicus movies as well.
He was in a few of them, yeah.
So an excellent cast, and our story begins with an animation, the opening credits. These are quite short, I thought, for the time. And normally, especially with the Corman Poe openings, we get these really strange sort of animations. I think they use things like sort of oils and that sort of stuff. There's normally a spider pops up at one time. I think we dubbed him Sydney the Stunt Spider because he never got a credit. But this is quite short, but everything is red, of course.
Yes.
And from there, we go straight into this, just a lovely scene of, it's almost the Universal graveyard type scene, isn't it? It's twisted, barren trees, bleak landscape, fog, and just that sort of mournful note of wind in the background.
Yeah. It's one of those things that nowadays people look down on these films that are quite obviously shot in a studio, but doing an external scene. But I think there's some real charm to those soundstage sets. There's something about them. It's why it does remind me of all those movies of that era. You got them in Hammer a lot and all that kind of thing, didn't you? And like you say, the Universal graveyard, that's exactly what it is, right?
Well, I think they're very contained. But to be fair, sometimes you can be in an outdoor location like that and you can feel that effect, especially if there's a lot of mist or fog around, that sort of thing. So, I suppose people want to talk about realism, but then a lot of the point of these films is the symbolism as well. And the atmosphere.
Indeed.
We're back to our whole weird fiction thing of creating the atmosphere as much as anything else.
Yeah, and this has got it in spades, like right from this opening scene. Because, there's an old woman wandering through the woods and there's a guy all dressed in red from head to toe, hooded red cloak sitting by a tree. There we go. Tell them deliverance is at hand. It's about as portentous as it gets, isn't it? It's just...
I like the way she sort of bowed to him. She's got reverence for this figure. She's got an idea of who he is or what he represents in some way. And I also thought something we see a lot in this film, but it starts with those cloaks because everything else is grey pretty much. It's very monochrome. And then you've got this red, and it's red with a capital R, isn't it? It's red.
Yeah, sumptuous is what I wrote in my notes.
Oh,
sumptuous.
Excellent word.
But it reminds me of like Die Farbe, the German adaptation of Colour Out of Space, where it is entirely black and white except for the colour. I like it when films do that. It's something that, like, The Sixth Sense was another one that was noted for it.
Yeah,
that it was all quite brown and muddy looking, but then whenever there was a ghost, there was something vivid red in shot.
Yeah, And interestingly enough, when we talk about Nicolas Roeg later on, we don't look now. That was the little girl in the red coat, right?
Indeed.
So
Yeah.
there are several parallels, I think, there.
Yeah. It's a great opening scene, to be fair.
I also like the way he holds up the flower, which looks like a white rose, which turns red, and he gives that to her to take to the village. So this is how the plague, well, we can talk about what it might be later on, but this is how it's transmitted through something as beautiful as a flower.
Yeah, which is very Poe.
Yes.
That is incredibly Poe. And I like the way, like you're saying about the reverence, when the other villagers are talking about him in a bit, when Vincent Price turns up in the village, he's saying she met a holy man and he told her. So I think that is the sort of implication. They see him as almost like a priest, something like that.
Yeah, it does seem to be, doesn't it? Yeah, she certainly doesn't question him at all or anything. You know, there's an acceptance. But perhaps that is part of the story with these people. They just have to accept almost what is given to them. But then the idea of deliverance, I mean, obviously there's deliverance from Prospero's tyranny, which is how some of the villagers read it. But there's also deliverance from their life of toil, right?
Well, that's it, because there's parallels, isn't there? They're both delivering them in the same kind of way, if you look at it, because Vincent Price is giving out the mercy of death later on and all that kind of stuff. So,
well, we see this very quickly, right? Because we next go to the village where Prospero turns up in a rather fine carriage, which has a big monogrammed P on the side. And I like the black plumes on the top as well. It's almost like a funeral carriage, isn't it?
Indeed.
And another thing that I love about this film is the outfits, the wardrobe. I'm going to pinch your word, sumptuous.
It is. It's incredibly sumptuous. What I like most about this is this second scene. He kicks off with a little kid sitting in the road.
Oh, yeah.
And
they're just going to run him over, aren't they?
Yeah.
So we get that sense of already that these people's lives they're just cheap as far as Prospero's concerned. They're worth nothing. He probably takes more care of his dogs and his falcon than his people.
Absolutely.
Yes, and the peasants are revolting, aren't they? Because we get these sort of mutterings about Prospero turns up and he says, "Oh, here I am. I'm looking after."
Thank you for your harvest, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, like we had any choice and leave us to start. There's like going on in the background. But of course, he picks one of these comments up at one point and rounds on the guy.
Gino, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Gino and Francesca's father, right, get sort of cornered a bit.
Yeah.
And he doesn't muck about. He just says to his guard, "Oh, garrot them."
Garrot them. Yeah, there's no mucking about. It's just killing at a whim, isn't he? He's like the archetypal psycho, isn't he?
Yeah.
Just like click his fingers and kill people.
Yeah, and of course Francesca begs for mercy. Don't kill them. He says, "Well, if my hound bites me, then I have it put down," sort of thing, and it's very much that attitude. These people are his possessions. But all this talk of sedition and retribution is interrupted by a scream from a nearby hut. And we get a very vivid shot of the Red Death has arrived in the village.
Yeah, it's the old woman from earlier. Yeah, so Vincent Price does what Vincent Price does. He takes the three, right, you two, I'm going to make you kill each other for my entertainment. You can be my concubine. And and then again, he just proves to be an utter bounder. He's just like, "Oh, this plague, just burn the village. Burn it down."
I thought there's a little bit of imagery here. There seemed to be a bit of lingering on the burning crosses as well, which was interesting.
There was, yeah.
So is that destruction of their faith, do you think? Or is that what that's alluding to?
I think so, because that's the whole thread running through it, is his whole, basically his drive is to corrupt Jane Asher's faith.
It's like it's almost like a competition between their respective faiths, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's some great conversations they both have throughout the film about like, well, my God is love and yours is death, and you da. And yeah, it's a big theosophical debates about who's better, God or Satan, kind of thing.
Yeah. So that takes us to the castle, which looks very neat. That's a proper castle, isn't it? It has a very sort of it's not what would you call it? A sort of practical, plain fortress. It's quite ornate and baroque, isn't it?
Yeah. It really is. It's almost like one of those follies that King Ludwig had
Ludwig
made.
of Bavaria.
Yeah, Bavaria. It's almost like those, isn't it? These all turrets and
It's Italian style, isn't it? That's what it is.
Yeah.
And we get our first scene in the castle, and straight away we get this amazing contrast between, a few minutes ago we were in this hut, which was rough wood and dirt, and this poor woman with the plague. This is like a sort of marble barn, isn't it? It's all white and gold and lush.
I love the clock.
Yes.
The pendulum is an axe. I want one.
Yeah, which is a nice little nod to Poe, of course, there, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think in the original story, this was an ebon clock that chimes quite regularly at certain events throughout. And he notices, of course, that Francesca is wearing a crucifix. He says to her, "Are you a believer?" And he asks her to remove it. And this is where we start getting this battle of the faiths.
Yeah, I like the way he just sort of strips her and chucks her in the bath. And Jane Asher is so English, isn't she? So when she turns around and goes, "It's not right for you to look at me. It's not right that you should look at me." I couldn't help but sort of laugh to myself. It is so RP. It's,
And this is where we get Mr. McGee turns up as Alfredo. So what's happening is Prospero is organising a masque. He's organising a set of revels and has invited all the local gentry round. Of course, as it turns out, by doing this, he's also giving them safety against the Red Death because they're in lockdown effectively, aren't they, once they're in the castle?
Effectively, yeah. And then people who don't make it there, we'll see.
And this is where we start to see something of we're going to use sumptuous a lot, I think, this time. Third outing is simply the best word to describe it all. The sumptuous set with the green and blue candles and the clock and the flooring, everything looks really, really nice.
So all those red and gold drapes and all that kind of stuff. I mean, if I had the money, that's how my flat would look.
That's exactly what we were saying. Yeah. And this is where we get introduced to Esmeralda and Hoptoad. So we get this subplot from Hop Frog, who, of course, in the nature of things in those times, if you were not, inverted commas, ordinary, you might get pulled in as entertainment in some twisted way. Yeah.
She's basically made to dance, isn't she? And this is where we get Alfredo reveals himself to be he's a bit of a wrong-un, isn't he? Right from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He's slavering virtue. He's virtually drooling over, isn't he? And what does he say? "Oh, I'm wondering."
Yeah.
And I think Prospero says, "Yeah, I think you wonder about every female in my castle, don't you?"
And he's on about corrupting innocence. It's like,
that's an interesting aspect of this film is Prospero's invited all these guests in, but he despises them, doesn't he?
Oh, God,
he really doesn't like them.
Yeah. We see that in the next scene because, she's dancing and she knocks over Alfredo's beer, basically. So he slaps her, and that's the end of that. And after this, you get people laughing. So Vincent Price rounds on one of them and says, "You're this, that, and the other. You're big, you're fat, you're like a pig. Get down and be a pig." So he does. He gets down and starts oinking.
Yeah, we get this succession, don't we? One says, "You're just a worm. You're a donkey. You ride that donkey." And
jackass.
Jackass. Yeah. He gets them to really show what they are. In a sense, they're revealing their inner selves. So, it's not like he has any sympathy at all for these people, even though he is part of their clique, is part of their set. I thought there were two other interesting things. Just a small thing. When the woman Esmeralda is dancing, Prospero is sort of watching, and one of the servants just brings in this chair and puts it behind him, this incredibly ornate chair. I thought it was just a nice little touch because, of course he wouldn't be standing, would he? It's like the servant is just there with the chair.
No.
That said something about his character.
That's his entire job.
Yeah. Hey, it's a job.
yeah. This is it.
And the other line about the corrupting people was not corrupting, instructing.
That's it.
It's really quite creepy, isn't it?
It is. It's borderline
creepy.
nonsense, isn't it? It's,
That's very groomy, isn't it?
Yeah. It's all a bit wrong. But I like once he's done this whole thing of getting them to wriggle around like worms and ride people pretending to be jackasses, he sort of leaves them to it. But I love the line. As he leaves, he says, "Show me the lives and loves of the animals." So here we go.
We know what that's going. Well, you can see if this was remade, you can repicture that scene, can't you?
Oh yeah,
you can see how that would go. And as it was, of course, at the time, there were some cut scenes from this one in particular that we'll get to later on. But most of it is implied, isn't it, in this period?
Yeah. If it was only like 10 years later, if this had been in the 70s or whatever, there'd have been.
Oh, it would have been nude, full frontal nudity, wouldn't it?
Of course, it would. Yeah.
And I did like the way, as a musician, of course, that the band just plays on whatever is going on around them. The band plays on.
Yeah, I liked that. I like the fact that it ddid remind me of that scene at the end of Carry On Up the Khyber, where the orchestra are just playing while the place is getting bombed to hell. It was basically like that, wasn't it? The band just carrying on regardless, just like completely disinterested. Yeah.
Well, professionals.
There you go.
When do we get the buffet? When do we get fed?
Where's the rider gone?
Where's the rider? So now we get into one of the major visual themes of the film, which are these incredible colours. I'm going to say vivid this time instead of sumptuous.
Vivid, yeah.
And we get a succession of rooms, which we later see reflected when all the deaths get together. So it's 7. Now, we can talk about 7 as the mystical number in various ways, of course. But it's 7 rooms, 7 colours, 7 deaths. And we begin with the yellow room, which once held a prisoner.
Indeed, yeah. I've got to admit, the first time I watched it, I was expecting what's-her-face, Tit Cross, to end up in that. Right. End up being locked in there. But, yeah.
Yeah, so he locked, I think it was his father's best friend in this room, and the whole room is yellow. Everything in it is bright yellow. And he locked him in there for a couple of years. And as a sort of experiment, and this ended up driving the man so mad he couldn't bear to look at sunlight again, which is kind of a strange thing.
Yellow is often associated with madness. I mean, when you look at things like the yellow wallpaper, and obviously the king in yellow. So it's that kind of same.
Yeah, well, that whole yellow sickness thing, the late Victorian sort of movement, is it Jeune? Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean the king in yellow, you could almost picture. When we see the deaths later on, that's a very king in yellow type look, isn't it?
Isn't it?
And we get this element of, it looks like almost hypnotism or mind control is exerting on Francesca here, which I guess ties in with that satanic aspect that comes out. Now, this isn't really so much in the Poe story, but this is something that was added in more by the writer, Charles Beaumont. And I think it does work. It gives it an extra layer of his being cruel for a reason. Not that it excuses anything that he does, but it's almost like he's conducting this experiment. Well, this again almost takes us back to Uncle Alistair, where you get the feeling that he tried some quite horrible things in the nature of an experiment to see what he could do to people, to see what he could get away with.
Yeah, there's a method to the madness.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So in this sequence, we go from the yellow room to the purple room. And this is where we get the discussion about God. And it's not so much that there is no God, Prospero says, but that God is dead. And something or someone else is now in his place.
Yeah.
And from there, we move to the white room, which is the 6th in the sequence. I guess maybe for budget or time or whatever, they didn't shoot all of the colours in all of the rooms. But the white room is the final one before the black door. So when we see later on the 7 colours with the 7 deaths, we have blue representing birth, purple represents growth, green is spring, yellow is summer, white is old age, violet is impending death, and black is death. So black is the last room naturally, and he forbids her to enter this room. And that white room, by the way, that put me in mind of 2001, A Space Odyssey. that scene at the end where he's really, really old. And I just have a memory of that room being very white. And then the black monolith appears at the foot of the bed. It was a very, very creepy scene.
Yeah. Every time you say the White Room, I've got Cream's The White Room in my head.
Dun, 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 dun.
In the White Room with black corners at the station. Well, it's more specifically the Hugh Cornwell version.
Ah, right. Yeah. Now, it wouldn't be an AIP Poe film if you didn't have a bit of nighttime wandering in the palace or the castle, and some strange distant sounds, and the curtains blowing in the breeze and all that kind of stuff.
I was gonna say those curtains. That it's almost like it's almost like they had it in their contracts. They had to get those sort of gossamer curtains blowing on the breeze in every single film I've seen.
Do you think there's a guy with a hairdryer sort of stood behind them or something? I wonder how they worked it. It couldn't have been a big fan because that would have blown everything, wouldn't it? So,
yeah.
But yes, there's a bit of late night roaming goes on with Francesca, and she bumps into Juliana, who's up and about as well. And there's this, Juliana is feeling a little bit put out because I think wasn't Francesca giving her a room as well originally or something? Mm. And it's almost like, oh, I'm bored with you now. I've got a new toy.
Yeah, and that's why Juliana's basically saying, but I'm ready to do the final rituals now.
Yes, yes.
Please don't get rid of me for a newer model. It's that cool thing, isn't it?
I wonder if it's because she's accepted it and she's all for it. And as we see later on, the term is she becomes a bride of Satan, right? So that's why he's lost interest. She's not a challenge anymore.
No.
Well, this is someone with a deep-rooted faith. Like, that's more of a test for him.
Yeah, it's that the chase is better than the catch. It's that old chestnut, isn't it?
Yeah. Motorhead.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
The other thing that this whole sequence reminded me of was Rosemary's Baby as well, for some reason.
I can see that. Yeah.
That very sort of dreamy, you're not quite sure what's real or what isn't. There's a feeling of impending terror or gloom or something, but there's nothing tangible.
It's that whole Vaseline on the lens thing, isn't it?
I wonder what you're going to say.
No, but that was what they did. That sort of slightly soft focus. They used to just put a smear of Vaseline on the camera lens. That's how they used to do it. But yeah, we're only talking about Vaseline in our presence.
Oh dear, Lady Titcross.
Lady Titcross and the Vaseline. There we go.
And we get this. This was nice, this sort of distant, sonorous voice, sort of chanting or saying some sort of incantation or prayer or call. Mm-hmm. And we get some more nice castle shots. She goes down some stairs. We get the blowy drapes. We get the candles blown out. All the tropes are there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's gothic with a capital G at this point, isn't it? It's all the tropes. All it needs is a bit of lightning outside. That's all. That's the only thing that's missing.
Yeah, the storm outside, yeah. And she goes through the rooms again and comes to the black door. And this time she enters within. And I liked we had the crow in there, or the raven, I expect it is, which is another nod to Mr. Poe, of course. And on each side of the altar, those dragon statues look really cool as well. And we've got Prospero. He looks like, I guess he's in some sort of trance or something like that, I guess is what it is.
Yeah, well, it's very vampiric, isn't it? Almost.
Yeah.
He's almost like he's in his coffin kind of thing. He's almost very Dracula in a way.
Yeah. And the eyes just suddenly open, and that's enough to send her scurrying back to her room. So the next day, Francesca sort of blows all this off as I think it was probably just a dream and that type of stuff. Or a dream within the dream. This is where we get the reappearance of Freddie the Falcon.
Indeed. Yeah.
Uncredited, might I add, as well.
Yes, yeah. He's the star of the show, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, I've recently spent a day at a local bird of prey centre where we went from handling a small owl through to a falcon all the way up to an American eagle,
nice.
Which has a sort of 6 or 7 foot wingspan. That's quite a thing, having that on your arm.
Yeah, I've got a photograph of me with an eagle owl. And I tell you, bloody weight in that.
Yeah, it's there. It's heavy stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the way the talons hold onto your arm was...
I know. Yeah, you can just feel the power, can't you? You're just thinking, if it wanted to, it could do me a lot of damage very quickly.
Just take your nose off, wouldn't it? And that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. Yeah, apex predator, right? You're at the top of the food chain in that particular area.
Yeah.
And then we get this this conversation where Prospero talks about, he demonstrates how the falcon will kill something for him. And he talks about the process by how the falcon is trained, which is suppressing its will, basically. So this ties in with his satanic interests, I guess, because this seems to be his whole thing, suppressing the will of others in order to do his bidding.
Yeah, it's a brilliant metaphor, really, for what he does and how he's planning on corrupting her, basically.
And we get all these names for his master as well, don't we? Satan, the fallen angel, the devil. It's this long list of titles.
The Lord of Flies.
The Lord of Flies.
I love the way he says it. It's just quintessential Vincent Price, isn't it? The Lord of Flies.
It's an interesting delivery, hasn't it? It's quite sort of flat, isn't it? Generally, he's fairly sort of monotonal.
Yeah.
It's not well, let's take an extreme. It's not a Brian Blessed, is he?
No. He's very measured. It's all very measured, and his enunciation is always incredibly precise as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's what gives it the menace. It's that precision and menace and a measured aspect to it.
Yeah.
You know, truly dangerous people don't need to shout.
In case we didn't know already, we just get confirmation of what an arse Prospero is here, because a coach turns up late, right? There's another guest who said, but I've been invited. And Prospero says, you can't come in. The Red Death is about. And of course, the guy starts begging to be let in, even to the extent of offering Prospero his wife. This did make me laugh, this scene, as nasty as it was.
Oh, it made me laugh as well, because it's just the way Vincent Price does sort of goes, I've already had that dubious pleasure. It's just like, all right.
And the wife sort of goes, oh, you bastard.
Yeah. And then he makes the mistake, doesn't he, of saying, spare us, please. Okay, I'll spare you. Gets his crossbow out.
Boom. Yeah. So, you know, you could say he gave him a merciful death rather than the lingering Red Death, perhaps, I suppose.
Yeah.
And to be honest, in a way, we always say this with the zombie films, right? You've got your band of heroes holed up somewhere, and they always let the idiot in, don't they?
Indeed. Yeah.
And it's always the idiot who then leaves the gate open or leaves the window open, or so, you know, I have some sympathy with that position.
Yeah. Walking Dead is a great example of that, isn't it? When they've got that, I don't know what series it's in. It's one of the early series where they've got that sort of, it's almost like a compound, an old factory or something, right? And these people who are obviously idiots. Yeah, come in. And then before you know it, you've got zombies in there. So what would you expect was going to happen?
Give them get the crossbow out and, you know.
Yeah. Well, he's even worse to the wife, isn't he? Because he's just like, well, you know, spare yourself.
Throws her a dagger, doesn't he? Yeah. So I suppose it gives her the option in that sense.
Yeah. You don't see what happened, but it cuts. A nice camera cut, actually, because it cuts to the dagger landing on the floor and then to somebody else picking up a dagger in the dungeon.
Yes.
It's a lovely cut. I like it.
Nicely done. Yeah, it's nicely done. Yeah, because we go to the dungeons where Gino and Francesca's father, they're being encouraged to fight each other, which they steadfastly refuse to do. And we get, I suppose he's the man at arms, isn't he? The character. I'm not sure who the actor is, but he looked familiar to me. And I got a feeling he might have been a sort of stuntman or fight arranger at the time. He has that look about him.
Yeah. And he has a great line, doesn't he? I won't kill you. I'll just cut you a bit.
So we get this fight goes on, and it's, it's pretty standard sort of rapier type fencing with broadswords and whatever, but, you know, it serves its purpose. And Prospero comes down, and I thought this was a nice line. Gino says, well, there were two nice lines here. Gino beats the man at arms, and Prospero makes the observation, which is quite true. The worst opponent to fight if you're a master swordsman is a total beginner, because they're totally unpredictable.
Yeah.
And then there was this line where Gino says, well, we're not going to fight. He goes, and of course, I know you could torture us and have us killed, but then you've still lost. So he knows exactly which button to press on Prospero.
Yeah, it's almost like a checkmate, but Prospero is such a devious old buzzard that his solution later on is quite devious, isn't it? It's just, I'll make you do what you want.
Yes.
What I want.
Yes. And also, while down in the dungeons, of course, it wouldn't be a trip to the dungeons without a bit of distant screaming of some poor sod on a rack or whatever's going on. And Prospero just makes the observation, well, life is often ugly, but because of people like you.
Yeah, you nutcase.
No one else is doing this shit.
It's only you fruitcake. Yeah.
But he also goes into this. I thought this was interesting from, well, you could say from a D&D perspective. He talks about Satan as the god of reality and as being anti-chaos. Without Satan, you're just enmeshed in this chaos. Well, that's lawful evil, right? That's straight up lawful evil. I mean, it put me in mind of like Anton LaVey and people like that, who are avowed Satanists. But everything is very ordered.
Well, the Golden Dawn were the same, weren't they? You know, all those kind of groups. Even like the Process Church and Final Judgment had a definite hierarchy and things like that. You know.
Yeah. It's very structured, very ordered, and I mean, in a sense, as ordered as the Christian churches, right? Well, is it? Do you think it's often it's an inversion of things like with the Black Mass and that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's all the same structures, which is interesting.
Yeah, but even like proper wacko fringe cults like the Manson family, there was a hierarchy in there as well, because you had Manson at the top, but he had his lieutenants.
Yeah, true.
You had Tex and Squeaky and Mary Bruner. You know, it's just there was a definite hierarchy even there, and there was no. I mean, they were just off the face on acid all the time. So you know, it's interesting, isn't it?
That same as he did with the Falcon, right? They say they sew their eyes shut to make it blind for a time. And in that case, they're giving them psychedelics in order to subdue the will.
That's exactly what it was.
Same principle, yeah. Oh, 2 band names came up here.
Oh, yeah.
The Glories of Hell.
Nice.
And Velvet Darkness.
Velvet Darkness. If there isn't already a goth band called Velvet Darkness, I'm not sure why. There should be.
There bloody well should be.
There's a band called Velvet Condom, so there should be one called Velvet Darkness.
No, I don't like that. Velvet Condom. No, that sounds very unhygienic.
But is it velvet lined or velvet? You know, is the inner or the outer that's velvet?
Just stop. Just stop.
Yeah. These are the things my brain thinks about. Oh dear.
So then we come back to Juliana, who we see, as we said, she's full into this whole trip, right? She's praying to Belial. She wants to become a handmaiden and betrothed to the devil. This is where we get the branding scene. Send me a demon. So I wonder here how much she's trying to exert her own or develop her own power, perhaps in order to move against Prospero.
Well, I kind of got that impression, especially later on, because she's kind of like, I don't need you anymore. I'm more powerful. I've got more influence in hell than you have, kind of thing, which obviously brings about her downfall in the end. But yeah, so I guess this was all a bit of a power grab.
And now we cut back to our subplot with Hop Toad and Esmeralda, the tiny dancer, which was it Elton John or Tina Turner? Tiny dancer. Tina Turner. Right.
Tina Turner. Tiny dancer. Oh dear.
And this is where his plot to get his revenge on Alfredo starts to unfold. And I thought this was very nice, the way this was done. He plays on Alfredo's vanity just the right way. And so he sort of says, well, everyone's going to be at the ball. Everyone's going to be masked and dressed in a costume. And there'll be this or there'll be that. How about if you went as a great ape? That'd be something really different. And basically he says to him, dressed as a great ape, you can sort of do whatever you want to people. And they'll just accept that as part of your, right, apeness. It's part of the whole thing. So he knows exactly how to work him, and he brings it. I don't know where he got this costume from, but must have an extensive wardrobe in the castle.
No, it came. I've written this down. It came from the room full of stuffed animals.
Ooh,
because apparently there's a taxidermy room in the castle.
Ah,
there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah, because in Hop Frog, he's a jester.
Yeah.
To a tyrannical king, isn't he? And he basically pulls the same trick. It's a flammable ape costume and
yes,
nasty.
Word of warning, kids: if you buy an ape costume, make sure it's not flammable.
Yeah, stay away from naked flames.
Yeah, especially if you're in a castle with lots of blue and red and green candles.
Mm.
So now we get Francesca, another nighttime scene where it sounds like there's something outside her door. There's a strange sort of breathing noise going on.
Yeah, and a rattling of the handle. Again, it's that really, it's one of those scenes that is in most of these kind of movies, isn't it?
Mm.
You'll get the wind blowing on one side of the screen from one speaker, and on the other you got the rattle and a little bit of a sort of thing going on. Yeah.
So you wonder if Juliana did succeed in getting her demon sent to her.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's what it was supposed to tease.
There's a kind of implication there, but Juliana herself turns up and she's got her brand now. She's wearing the brand of Satan openly, and she says the veils of ignorance have been lifted from my eyes, and she's heading for immortality and all these wonderful things, all these wonderful rewards she's going to get for being a bride of Satan.
Yeah, just one more right.
She gives Francesca the cell key to release Gino and her father. And straight away you think, is this a bit of a setup going on here?
I got what's his face from Star Wars in my head. It's a trap, It's
a trap.
He's a squid-headed chap. Yeah.
The other reason I thought this might be a setup was because she seems to sneak past the guards quite easily, and I was pretty sure one even looked up at her as she went past, which I can imagine Corman going, "You're not supposed to look at her, you idiot," but they haven't got time to reshoot it,
Yeah. It's probably one of those they didn't notice until they edit or something.
And we get the nice tour of the dungeons here with all the usual webs and iron rings, and there was a lovely stone face at one point sort of comes out of the darkness. And of course we get a quick glimpse of some of the victims that we heard earlier. You can't quite see what's going on.
No, but there's a lot of blood and a lot of pained expressions. It's all you need, isn't it? They're not having a very nice time, let's put it like that.
No. And then I thought it was lovely of her. She frees Gino and her dad.
And leaves the other poor sods in there. I know, I thought that at all. Yeah.
I mean, maybe they couldn't get out anyway or whatever, but at least give them the opportunity.
At least give them the key ring, at least do that thing that you get in a lot of these, like, here you go, chaps, and throw the keys in sort of thing.
Yeah, free yourselves.
Yeah.
So we come back past the guard room, we get a fighty fight, which then takes us up onto the battlements, where there is a guard with his back to them, and they're just about to take him out, and he turns, and it's Prospero.
Well, he's actually supposed to be the one that's been paid off by Juliana. She said she'd paid off one of the guards on the battlements.
Right.
So they're going up, going, "Hi, we're here. Get us out of here." And he turns around and goes, "Yeah,"
Yes, and I assume that the guard went and told him what was happening. Juliana has betrayed me, and you killed 3 of my guards. You must pay.
Yeah, I wondered how he knew, because they've just literally gone from the killing up to the battlements. So I wondered how he knew that they'd killed.
That's true.
But in the end, it's one of those things that never matters.
Yeah,
but it doesn't matter. But it's my brain. I was like, how does he know? Maybe Satan told him. There we go.
Could be. He's got supernatural awareness, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Well, we presume the guard told him. Perhaps he knows what she's doing. So perhaps it's a double setup. She was the one being set up rather than Francesca.
Yeah.
This leads us into the finale. Then the climax, the huge mask. The titular mask.
Indeed. And it's the feast that kicks it off, isn't it, to begin with?
Yes.
It does it's almost like an opening ceremony, isn't it?
This is going to be like a 3-day bender, isn't it, basically? It's not just a dinner and some dancing, is it? This is full-on revelry.
And of course, he's got some entertainment planned. And this is where you get his solution to the the father and Gino not wanting to fight, he's come up with a novel way of getting them to kill one of them. Basically, one of them will die, one of them will live. He's got 5 daggers, one of which is dipped in a poison which will kill in 5 seconds.
Yes.
And I've written down in my notebook, Gothic roulette. Because it is basically goth roulette, isn't it?
It's not Russian roulette, it's goth roulette.
Goth roulette.
Brilliant.
These ornate daggers. It is, it's goth roulette. There we go.
Really nice. So they do, don't they? You get this tense scene where they pick a dagger out of the table, slice their forearm with it, and then wait 5 seconds because that's the time that this poison will work in. And
it's a brilliant scene, to be honest.
We get down to the final dagger, right, which is the dad. So he does what Prospero fully expects him to do. Rather than cut himself, he lunges for Prospero. Prospero's got his sword ready. Boom, runs him through.
Yeah.
Where is your god now?
Yeah.
You do a better Vincent Price than...
Yeah. Where is your god now? Yeah, it's a really good scene and the climax to it. And I love how he toys with Gino here. He's just like, because it didn't go how I wanted, I'm going to kill you anyway. And then he's actually, no, I won't. I'll let you go. You could go back to the village in the Red Death.
Yes, you can go back out to certain even more horrible death than Prospero could give him, probably.
Yeah.
So the midnight masque begins, and is this where Francesca... Well, no, I suppose she's still got her faith because she basically says, well, let Gino go and I'll do whatever you want. She kind of surrenders, but it's on her terms.
Indeed, yeah. She's still clinging on to her faith. She hasn't relinquished it yet, basically.
Yeah.
But she's willing to... Yeah, it's whatever in inverted commas, isn't it? It's there's a lot of implication in the "I'll do whatever" to let it.
Well, we have some idea, which of course he could, do at any time, given the power inequality here. But again, that kind of means he loses. It's the same thing as if he just killed Gino. Well, you've not actually won, have you? Even though you've got your way in a sense.
Yeah, it's all mind games, isn't it? It's power games. It's that kind of thing.
So Gino's out wandering around the haunted woods, and there's strange animal noises and all the usual mist and weirdness. And he happens to come across a chap dressed in red with his little cards sat under the tree.
Yeah, and I've written down in my notebook, he meets the lurker in red.
Oh.
And as soon as I wrote it down, I've had lurker in red
is stalking me.
Yeah, nice. Nice.
Oh, a new anthology, Lovecraftian song titles as the basis for a story.
Nice.
Mentally filing that one. And I thought this was good because the Red Death says, he's got the cards, he's turning the cards here. And Gino says, I've sinned, I've killed, this kind of thing. But the Red Death says, but was it for yourself? And he says, no, it was for someone else. Yeah. So what's the tarot card he gives him? Mankind, I think, is the card. So Gino here is representing the best of mankind or humankind, do you think?
Yeah, it's almost like he's sort of a champion of humanity kind of thing, I guess. Yeah. And
then we go from humanity to being an animal, or back to Alfredo, because he actually says, I will become a little... There's this lovely line, I've got this big ape costume on, I'll become a little worm. And Hopto goes, yes, you will, but only for a short while.
Yeah. Yeah, a lovely bit of foreshadowing there. Yeah. And from there we get this scene, which I don't know about you, but as soon as these guys came out with there's the bell, and they've got bodies on the cart. It's the plague scene, right?
Oh, yeah.
Bring out your dead. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, there you go.
I'm not dead yet. I think I'm feeling better.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's hard not to do that. I thought, by the way, this whole scene, especially that bit with the village and everything else, it's very medieval. Yeah. It's quite sort of, you could see Bosch, can't you, and all that sort of thing in this. Those vivid colours again.
Indeed, yeah. It's almost taken from one of those kind of paintings, the set design. It is very much that.
Mm. And now we've mentioned the dream scenes and the wafty drapes and all the rest. another standard of the Corman Poe films is the psychedelic scene, right?
Yeah.
And this is what we get now with. It's not really a dream sequence, is it?
No, it's a trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is her final rite, I guess, her final initiation.
Yeah, she drinks from a chalice and basically starts tripping balls. And,
you think it's belladonna or something like
probably,
that? I was thinking maybe.
Belladonna and aconite, something like that. Yeah.
I really like the score at this point, by the way. We've not really mentioned the music yet, but the score was really effective here. Well, it's effective throughout.
Indeed. Yeah.
And everything is sort of green and smoky. She's got a sort of wafty nightdress on.
Yeah.
And we get this succession of, I guess you'd call them priests, but of everything except the Christian denomination.
I've put a bunch of weirdos with blades. And my next note is it's a bit like a mid-80s Ozzy Osbourne music video. So
Right, it's funny you say that. Yeah, let's park that there for the moment. But I'll come back to music videos later on. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Right.
So yeah, I mean, I thought we had to me, what looked like Aztec, maybe sort of Indonesian or Pacific. There was a druid with a sickle.
Yep.
Babylon or something like that. Assyrian, perhaps. An African, or I guess what you call shaman or priests. Of the, I suppose, what would be termed pagan variety.
Yeah. Don't know the exact terminology, but yeah.
And she undergoes the death experience here, which is all part of that initiation, right? You, in whatever aspect or way it's done, you effectively or you symbolically die and are reborn.
Which again goes back to what the Manson family would do, and the cults, and a lot of those cults. The Branch Davidians were another one. They would take these drugs, and people would die and be reborn. They would and reenact the crucifixion and things like that. So these guys would go through a sort of a pseudo death and rebirth. And I guess this is exactly the same thing, just a sort of satanic inversion of.
Yeah, well, it seems to be mirrored in every tradition pretty much, wherever it's from. So it's obviously a very primal human thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like the whole river dunking thing, isn't it?
That's what baptism is in effect, in a way, isn't it? You're reborn, yeah. So she is full of herself now. She tells Prospero, I am betrothed of the devil. I have seen the terrors. And he says, not all, there are more. So you wonder what sort of ritual he's been through, because it presumably is at least one step ahead of her.
Yeah, she starts talking about the beauties of terror, doesn't she, and all that. It's, yeah. And then, terror strikes.
Well, yeah, we get a nice shot from the pendulum with the axe swinging, and then then Juliana gets it right. Yeah,
death by beak. She basically is very reminiscent of the Birds, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, very gory, right? Very again vivid.
Yeah.
And the cold line from Prospero, you should be nice to her. She just married a good friend of mine.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, I think the best way to describe Vincent Price's performance in this is arch.
Yes. Yeah, it's not especially camp, is he? Like in some scenes.
No, there is a couple of camp moments.
Hints of campery.
But it's very arch. It's very, you know.
We get the peasants turn up at the castle, the remaining peasants from the village. They get short shrift. They're told to store up nuts like the squirrels because winter's coming. You know, there's no food. Another band name. He does offer them accommodation in the Dungeons of Prospero. There you go.
Oh, nice.
That'd be a good story title, actually. The Dungeons of Prospero.
Would.
That's another mental file, mate. And then we get into the Masque proper, the climax of his revels.
Yeah.
And he's got this sort of black, was it look like a sort of shake or something? A bit like sort of Rudolph Valentino.
Yeah,
almost.
He's tossing out jewels, isn't he? And that, he gloats because those villagers, they're just like, have mercy. So he does. Again, he gets his men to shoot them down with crossbow bolts. And
it's consistent.
Yeah. And I just love how blasé he is about this. He's tossing out jewels and he's talking to Francesca, and he's just like, let's see how they scurry around looking for wealth, even though they already have it, greedy bastards, basically. And then he's like, just like, oh yeah, the 6 remaining villagers came. What did you do with them? I killed them. It was a mercy.
It was a mercy, yeah. Killing for kindness again. Meanwhile, we've got Gino who's climbing back in, because he's not going to leave Francesca there. And the Red Death pops up as well. It's like he's getting aid now from the Red Death.
He's now the lurker on the battlements.
Oh, well done, sir. Well played. And he actually gives them instructions, right? You know, wait until 1, and then you can escape with Francesca.
Yeah.
So the mask, this is the full-on, I've written down FPS here. We get these lovely camera shots through the crowd of these whirling colours and the dancers, the wonderful costumes.
And this is where we get the denouement of the Hop Frog subplot. Because the ape appears with Hop Toad pretending to be his sort of, his handler. And he starts trying to ravish a woman, doesn't he? And so Hop Toad's like, I'll restrain him. Yes. And he's lowered a chandelier and he ties him to it, hauls him up in the air. He's like, do you want some brandy?
Oh, yes, the brandy.
Yeah. Covers him in brandy and sets him on fire.
Yeah, it's the only time you see a gorilla go woof.
Oh.
And this plays very well, right? Prospero loves this. He sort of says, "I'll clear that mess away. Oh, when you find Hop Toad, give him 5 gold coins for an excellent jest."
Yeah, I love that. I like that. So, dude, just like, yeah, because he didn't like Alfredo anyway, because didn't like any of them, does he?
Well, no. And this was nice because Hop Toad and Esmeralda actually get to flee. They're a couple. They're looking out for each other. So,
indeed,
even in all this relentless cruelty, there's that aspect of love and kindness, and they get to escape. So that was cool.
Yeah, because they're 2 of the 6, aren't they? So
yes,
because at the end it's revealed that there's only 6.
Yeah, just the 6 left.
Living.
Yeah. Now, earlier on, Prospero did say no one was to wear a red costume. This is his only condition. And of course, what happens out the corner of his eye? He gets a glimpse of red.
Lurker appears. Lurking.
Yes, the lurker appears lurking. And again, we can go back to our don't look now and all that sort of thing, because this is just in the corner of the shot, moving out of shot, flash of red. And he starts getting a bit put out here. I command you to wait, and chases the Red Death, eventually sort of catches up with him. I think they're in one of the rooms, and he thinks it's Satan. He thinks it's his master finally come to visit. Yeah. And it's suddenly all creepy and crawly, isn't it? And, oh, thank you, master. And the Red Death's like, what are you going on about, you twat?
Pretty much, yeah.
I did think as well, the Red Death, there's sort of nice tassels on the mask. That was quite an interesting look.
Yeah.
Again, very sort of king in yellow. It sort of hides the features even more rather than just being a plain mask.
Yeah, it sort of even hides the contours, doesn't it? It's it's an interesting mask. And he has some great lines here, doesn't he? Satan is not my master. Death has no master. In that fruity tone, it's very nice.
And there is no face of death until the moment of your own.
There you go.
So basically, to see his face, there's your impending death.
Yeah.
And I thought this was nice. This idea of death and showing your naked face. Well, a naked face is a skull, right? So again, a nice implication there.
Yeah, you do wonder how much the Masque of the Red Death influenced Chambers.
Oh yeah.
Because he wears no mask. Death wears a mask. Death wears no mask. All that kind of stuff. All the stuff with masks. Yeah.
Yeah, it turns up for the big celebration in the court, right? Effectively, it's the royal court, isn't it? Yeah, and it's time for the unmasking.
Yeah.
Which I guess was a thing at that sort of event.
Yeah, the Phantom of Truth and all that. Yeah.
I wear no mask. Yeah. And the Red Death says it's time for a new dance, and we go into this lovely sort of quite atonal. It starts with the drums, the new dance, and the dancing becomes quite sort of disjointed now, doesn't it?
I like it, yeah.
Almost like they're puppets or marionettes being moved around.
Yeah, And as he walks, they all get the Red Death. And again, it's very 80s music video. You could almost see Adam Ant pouncing through the middle of them, couldn't you?
Don't you remember?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, so his guests are dying one by one, falling to the floor. And he still doesn't really quite get what's going on here, does he? And he's saying, but I made a pact with you. And he's saying that your pact will not save you. Each creates his own heaven and hell. But I suppose Prospero is so invested in what he's done. And could it even be that what he's done isn't true? It's not real.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the reality. Forget God, forget Satan. But death is here because, right, we know that. That's a fact.
Death is reality. Yeah, that's exactly it, isn't it? I mean, and that ties in with a lot of Poe's stuff. It's about the inevitability of death and the futility of fighting against death.
Yeah.
Because the Poe wasn't a very cheerful chap, so it was it was all that kind of thing, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was a bit upset that the band got it as well because they were just doing a job. It's just musos earning a crust.
Yeah, exactly. Unless
it was Coldplay, of course. In which case, I take it back. I don't.
No.
Yeah, so the guests are all falling one by one. There's like this sea of hands, and Prospero is sort of caught in this sea, is being sort of pulled around, but he eventually manages to sort of corner the Red Death, and that's where he takes the mask off. And I like this line, "Why are you afraid to die? Your soul has been dead for a long time." Which kind of ties in because, yeah, he's got all this wealth, he's got all this so-called power, but he's got no life inside him, is he, Prospero?
No, he's a husk, isn't he? He's just this hate-filled husk.
So, yes, the Red Death is unmasked, and it's Prospero himself, which took me right to The Prisoner, right? The finale of the Prisoner.
Yes, yeah.
So, that's it. That's the end of Prospero and all his guests. And we return to the forest again now. And we've got the Red Death sitting there playing cards with the little girl now.
Yeah, she was spared when he killed off the other villagers. He sort of killed them all except the kid. Because, that was incredibly cruel anyway, isn't it? Let her fend for herself.
Yeah, well, perhaps he's looking after her in some strange way. I suppose you get into like the sort of Terry Pratchett version of death, don't you? And all that sort of thing with this, where it's personified in some way. It has human traits and attributes.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out one day.
Yeah.
And this is where you get all your other deaths turn up as well. Your black and your yellow and your purple and so on. And they talk about an eternity of wandering.
Yeah, it's a beautiful shot because you got that tree from the start that he's sitting, leaning against. And 2 and 3 of them appear from one side and then 3 from the other. And then you get it's sort of the camera pulls back and you get this lovely shot of the tree framed in the center.
Yeah.
With the colours ascending from either side of it. It's a lovely framed shot.
And again, they're extremely vivid on that sort of grey backdrop, aren't they? They really do ping, they really do stand out.
Yeah.
I suppose we could talk about what deaths they represent. The plague was famously called the Black Death, but there could be other implications to what they are and who they are as well. Nonetheless, that's pretty much the end of the film. Yeah, we have the 6 that live, who are presumably left to go on their way. And we end with a quote from Mr. P about the Red Death holding illimitable dominion over all.
Yeah, which again was a recurring theme, like with the Conqueror Worm and all that kind of stuff, Basically, death is the ultimate.
Some people have suggested that the Red Death was inspired by, if that's the word, tuberculosis or consumption, which was obviously very prevalent at Poe's time. In fact, his wife, his mother, his brother, and his foster mother all died of consumption.
Mm.
And that is a very red death, right? Because of the nature of the illness.
Yeah.
Some have speculated that it also might have been cholera, because in 1831 there was a huge cholera epidemic in Baltimore. And of course, everyone would have read about the bubonic plague, which I can't remember the exact figures, but in England, didn't that wipe out something like 2/3 of the population?
Something like that, yeah. Don't know the exact figures, but yeah, it was close.
I know from some of my wanderings I've done in London for the Innsmouth excursions, some of the plague pits that are still there under Soho Square and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I've got tens of thousands of bodies under there.
Yeah. Yeah, we were wandering about in the hills up here, and we stumbled across a plague pit.
Wow.
It was just like, yeah,
Quite incredible.
mm.
So, yeah, I guess then, I mean, another suggestion was that it didn't really represent a disease as such, the Red Death, but it was more about sin and how we pay for that in the end, this sort of judgment. So certainly, I can see how that fits in a way, because certainly all the guests were horrible people, and Prospero obviously was. And the innocent survived, right? The dancer and the girl and everything else.
Yeah.
But I'm still moaning about the musicians. Maybe they were like a satanic loot band or something. They were an early sort of dark metal loot combo.
Oh God, the Middle Ages version of Burzum or something.
Well, I expect they all knew the Devil's Called and all that kind of stuff.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
So
Diabolus in Musica.
Yeah. Yeah, you need an organ for that kind of stuff, really. For medieval demonic music, you need an organ. So, of course, there's numerous versions of The Masque of the Red Death on audio available out there. There's been quite a lot of comic adaptations as well.
Yeah.
1 or 2 theatrical versions. I think there was one in England in the 90s, I think it was. And there's been a few films. There was one we were talking about earlier, 1989, with Herbert Lom. Which neither of us has ever seen. I can't believe we'd never seen it.
No, I've sourced a copy, so we'll have to have a watch of that.
Yeah. It doesn't even register on my radar anywhere.
No.
I know there were versions made of Hit and the Pendulum and Usher. I think one had Oliver Reed in, didn't it, or something?
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Yeah. But, so that's something to look out for. The other thing I wanted to mention, we were talking about music videos earlier, and I mentioned Nicolas Roeg, who did the cinematography for this. Now, that's a name that might be familiar to some people. He was working on films like Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago. And in 1970, he made what is one of my other favourite films, Performance, that stars Mick Jagger and Jamie Foxx. If you haven't seen it, do, because it's one of the outstanding psychedelic films of that era. And the basic plot, very quickly, is Jamie Foxx is a gangster, London gangster on the run, and he moves to Notting Hill and hides out in the home of Mick Jagger, who's a sort of washed-up pop star.
Right.
And the world of the gangster and the psychedelic pop star collide. And, well, without sort of spoilers or anything, the gangster ends up getting turned onto mushrooms, and it all goes. It's like this, their personalities almost merge into one thing. But it's an incredible film, and this lovely contrast between guys going, I'm going to cut your bloody leg off, and sort of, hey, man, just, sort of stuff.
Nice. Yeah.
It is a really excellent film. And performance in particular, I can see a lot of aspects from this film in that, the way it's shot, the colours and everything else. And performance was a huge influence on music videos in the 1980s, that first boom of music videos.
Because that's what I'm saying. I can't remember which Aussie video it is, but there's a woman in white on an altar, and there's all them gossamer things going, and the candles, and again the Vaseline on the camera lens, and then he cut to Ozzy sort of gurning,
Mr. Crowley.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so as I say, do check Performance out as well if you like that kind of thing. That really is an outstanding film, and so is this one as well. I'm sure most of you will have seen it already at some point. If not, rush forth immediately and showing my age now, aren't I? I was to say, go to your local video store, but,
It don't exist anymore, does it?
Grandad, yeah. Oh. I actually streamed it from Channel 4.
Oh, right.
They had, it was a new restoration. It was Martin Scorsese Film Foundation did a restoration in 2018, I think it was, or about that time. So that's why I think all the colours have been restored to full vibrancy.
That's the version I watched. I've got the Blu-ray release of it. Yeah.
And 1 or 2 cuts were restored. I think there was a cut around that scene with the dancing priests because it was implied that she was nude and maybe other things happened,
Yeah.
But those were all restored. So, yes, one of my favourite actually probably my favourite Corman film.
I'm just trying to think. Yeah.
I mean, I like all of those series, the Poe series, but I think this one it stands out especially.
It is a masterpiece, really. But yeah, I don't know. I always liked House of Usher.
Yeah.
Premature Burial was a good one as well, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, all of those were really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And top 5 Vincent films. I mean, Fibes is probably my number 1 Vincent film.
Yeah. Witchfinder General for me, I think. I love Witchfinder General. Yeah.
Theatre of Blood is up there as well, I think.
There's so many to choose from with Price, isn't there? You know, House on Haunted Hill and all that kind of stuff. It's, yeah. Witchfinder General. Take them to the tree.
Marvellous. Okay, well, I think our bus is arriving outside. I can hear old Joe applying his squeaky brakes. So the time has come again for us to depart Innsmouth. We hope you've enjoyed today's showing and discussion. As always, do let us know any thoughts, comments or suggestions that you have. We have had quite a lot of correspondence come in over the last couple of weeks. We'll be digging into that next time. Some lovely comments and questions coming in. We'll also be welcoming some new patrons next time as well. We've had quite a few new people sign up. So welcome to you. If you'd like to join our patrons and help support the show, do check out the Patreon site where you can sign up. You get access to all our bonus episodes. You get a quarterly copy of Innsmouth News. And, of course, you get free tickets for events such as the Innsmouth Literary Festival. If you can't make the actual event, what we do is for our patrons, we release the video recordings of all the panels as well. So that way, at least you get to see some of the things that go on in the King's House.
Yep, and so join us next time. Next time we'll be tying into our ongoing Fungi from Goth deep dive, which is patron exclusive, which you can, if you join up, you'll get access to that now. But we discovered while we were doing that the fragment of Lovecraft's story, the book, was later finished by a British writer, and we'll be delving into that. We'll be looking at the Black Tome of Alsophagus.
Excellent. Looking forward to that one. All right. Thanks again for listening, folks. We'll see you next time. With that, it's goodbye from me, Rob Poyton.
And it's goodbye from me, Tim Mendes.